Welcome. Today we're talking about three types of motivation, and we're asking ourselves, which type of motivation am I currently tapping into? Now, this is quite a simplistic approach to the subject, but at the same time, I think it provides quite a useful framework and will hopefully allow you to better understand your own motivations and thereby perhaps improve upon them in some way. So let's crack into it. Alright, so the first type of motivation that I'm going to be talking about is negative motivation. Now, what is negative motivation? Negative motivation is basically characterized by a fear of what will happen if you don't act, right? It comes from lack, and it can come from a desire for a feeling of completion that you don't already feel. Now, I want to stress that negative motivation does have a place in the world and in your life, and that is if there is a crisis of some kind, right? So take an example. You've got an exam tomorrow, and for whatever reason you've not done the revision necessary to do well. In fact, you might have done no revision at all. This is a crisis, and it's vitally important that you get the revision that needs to be done so that tomorrow isn't a disaster. And if you're having to draw motivation from this place of fear, then that's what's required. That is what is required, right? So in the short term, for these little short-term bursts, negative motivation is fine. However, many people who are into self-improvement and self-development, I think that many people are sort of, they accidentally fall into being negatively motivated for many years at a time over the longer term in a way that's sort of damaging and unsustainable. And you find people hit these sort of plateaus or hit these walls and become exhausted. And I personally think that often that's because they're coming from this place of negative motivation. So basically what happens is they might beat themselves up and not practice self-love or an embrace of where they are at the moment and who they are at the moment. And this is unsustainable, as I said, and counterproductive. They might also focus on the past a lot and think that their life is getting worse. They might miss the glory days of old, and they're trying to reattain that, but it's not really working. And their life just isn't quite how they want it to be. Another symptom of being negatively motivated is feeling behind your peers or others. And there's this feeling that you're trying to play catch up with them, trying to catch up to get to the level that they are at. So how do we solve this problem? Well, I'm going to talk more in future videos about specific ways to become more positively motivated, which is the next stage. But just for now, you want to go with the general guidelines of starting to focus more on what you do like about your life already, trying to accept and love who you are now, and then also focusing on what you want for the future, right? A focus on your goals, on your dreams, on the things that you want to happen, right? And I'm going to talk about specific techniques to get this down in future videos, but things like journaling and sort of writing down your goals and visualization can all help here. Now, I want to stress also that I'm not trying to get you to adopt a wishy-washy, fake, positive mindset if that's not completely possible. Rather, this is basically just a practical, rational focus on congratulating yourself frequently and ending the delusion that you're behind in any way, right? You're not behind, you're absolutely fine. In fact, you have brilliance within you, and I want to help you to see that. And this whole notion of being behind is just a big farce. So with that said, let's go on to the second type of motivation, positive motivation. So this is clearly better than negative motivation. This is where you're driven by a desire to attain goals, desiring results, and a focus on sort of the fruits of labour, right? The fruits of labour. People who tap into this type of motivation tend to be very hardworking, and they do often accomplish a lot. But they do often tend to be quite stressed as well for reasons that should become clear. So in this paradigm, there's a focus on the future, and on what's next, right? So it's like 6 months ahead, there's this goal, right? Let's focus on the goal and let's do what's required to get the goal done. And then when the goal is done, I'll feel happy. That's kind of how the mindset works here. Now this is a good paradigm and can be very useful, and everyone should try and tap into positive motivation throughout their lives in many cases. But it does have its limitations. For example, positive motivation, as I'm characterizing it, can lead people down career paths that they don't like. So the classic example is someone who is motivated by money, driven for the goal of earning a lot of money, and they do indeed earn a lot, but they don't really like their career. They don't really like what they have to do in order to get the money. And this is what can cause this kind of living for the weekend type approach, right? And people go through the week, and then when they hit the weekend, they are like, finally, thank God it's Friday, thank God I can rest because I don't really like my job, I'm just doing it for the money. So what is the third type of motivation that is superior in many ways to the previous two? And it is intrinsic motivation. So this is more inward looking. The others are more extrinsic. So negative motivation being focused on things you don't want to happen, your fears. Positive motivation, things you do want to happen, your desires and goals. Intrinsic motivation is more about the space that all this is coming from, right? It's not really seeking fulfillment in the future, it's seeking fulfillment in the present and finding fulfillment in the steps that are required to be taken in order for the goal to be met, right? Anyone who genuinely loves doing their job will be motivated from this inner space. They might be less financially successful, but they tend to have a lot more enthusiasm for their job and they just find it more fulfilling simply because they're feeling happy and fulfilled more of the time. Not just when they've achieved their goals. Yes, they celebrate the goals, but they're also celebrating daily life, right? And they find it easier to work hard for this reason as well. So what's the ideal? I think it's impractical to think that you're always going to be intrinsically motivated 100% of the time. If you can find a job, a university course, a hobby, or even just kind of a lifestyle in which you enjoy doing as you're doing it, not just for future benefits, then this is ideal. But it's unrealistic to think we're always going to be intrinsically motivated for everything. So we do have to sacrifice some things in the present in order to attain future goals. So when intrinsic motivation is possible, it's fine to tap into positive motivation. The ideal basically is a mix of both, right? Intrinsic motivation where possible, positive motivation where it's not possible. And if you try and tap into these two types of motivation and kind of steer away from the negative motivation kind of space, then you'll find yourself very happy and hopefully more fulfilled than you were. And finally, I just want to say it's important to practice self-love no matter where you are, just so that negative motivation doesn't really kick in and cause you to become driven for the wrong types of reasons. And that is it for today. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you got something out of it. And I will see you next time. Peace.